The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
It is Monday, August 22nd, 2016. My name is Sam Cedar. This is the four-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live to tape steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. What happened to the music? Matt, what's going on? We record this to tape, and all of a sudden, all the rules go out the window?
Makes it hard to edit when there's music in there.
Oh, my God. Makes it harder to edit when there's music in there. You got to trust me. I'm not going to throw right into these things. You're going to take a little break with like a little card or something. Oh, my God. See what happens? You go on vacation, and all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose. Ladies and gentlemen, we're on vacation this week. So that means, of course, this is a repeat, and blah, blah, blah. We're going to give you something that we ran. No! Wrong. This is all new. Well, actually, I guess today is not totally new, but probably new to you. Ladies and gentlemen, as a special, as you know, part of the Majority Report at HQ, some time ago, I had a board of directors meeting, and we had a huge proxy war. I'm trying to throw a bunch of business buzzwords in that I have really no idea what they mean.
Because there was an attempt at a hostile takeover.
There was a hostile takeover. There was a not so hostile takeover. There was a lot of hostility in the room.
That's a constant.
Constant. And at the board of directors, I was asked to present a PowerPoint presentation on how we would grow the Majority Report. And I, unfortunately, had lost the code to my PowerPoint software, so I couldn't use it. And I was stuck there, and I had all these board of directors looking at me, waiting for my presentation. And I said, oh, I know, we'll produce other podcasts that are slightly different from the Majority Report. Not slightly, significantly different from the Majority Report, but have the same qualities about the Majority Report that people like about the Majority Report. And they said, great, what are these other podcasts? And I said, well, I'll tell you. And then I pretended like I was getting a phone call and that my son was being suspended from school and I had to leave. And then, so later I got back and we huddled, and Michael said, I know, I'll do a show with my friend Phil McKenzie, and it will be called something like Two Dope Boys and a Podcast. And I was like, where did you come up with that name? And he said, you wouldn't understand. And I was like, okay. And I said, well, what would you talk about on it? And he said, well,
you wouldn't understand.
You wouldn't understand, but I'll tell you anyways. It's just cultural things that, and trends that affect our culture, and basically broad vision of what's going on in society. And I was like, I had no idea culture was going on in society. I thought it was just my kids in politics. And I've since learned that's not the case. And so what they do on Two Dope Boys, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, is there are 2 episodes a week. One's a shorter one, and it's usually a brand apology when a brand F's up and then has to apologize. It's pretty funny. And there's a certain amount of schadenfreude.
Schadenfreude, that's part of the longer, fuller episode that comes out once a week.
Right, sorry.
Right.
No, and then the On Point is the second one, which is generally an interview with somebody who's doing something interesting in a cultural and trend space. So today what we thought we would do is to give you a special episode of Two Dope Boys so that you can check it out, and then go and subscribe to Two Dope Boys and listen to the show and enjoy it. And it's a win-win because you'll be enjoying a show and you'll be supporting the Majority Report as we build our empire. And hopefully I won't get fired by the board of directors. So, and I will say this. It's apropos that we're we're doing the show that Michael is the co-host of, because whenever I think of Michael, I think about hiring. And the last time I had to hire was now almost a year ago, still painful for me, the process. And if you are hiring, you are going through the same thing, I am sure. Do you know where to post your job to find the best candidates? I didn't. Posting your job in one place is not enough to find quality candidates. I learned that the hard way. If you want to find the perfect hire, you need to post your job on all the top job sites. With ZipRecruiter.com, you can post your job to 100 plus job sites, including social media like Facebook and Twitter, all with a single click. Single clicks. If I could do everything in my life with a single click, heaven. You find candidates in any city, any industry, nationwide. Just post once. Watch your qualified candidates roll into ZipRecruiter's easy-to-use interface. Not your email box, and you lose track of who's who. You're not juggling emails. You're not juggling calls to your office. You can quickly screen the candidates in their interface, rate them, hire the right person fast. That's the key to this. Organization that is built in for you. Because you don't want to spend too much time hiring. You want to be able to get the best person, but you don't want it to make it be your business. You want your business to be your business. You want the hiring to help your business, not become your business. Find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by over 1 million businesses. Right now, my listeners can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free by going to ZipRecruiter.com/majority. That's ZipRecruiter.com/majority. One more time, try it for free. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/majority. I am telling you, the best time to look for qualified candidates to fill a job is when you don't need to fill that job. Go check it out today so you can see what kind of candidates are out there. Get a sense. You have your stable of candidates ready so that when Matt slacks off in the way that he's been doing, I can just go, whoop, gone. Lop his head off, hire the next one. All right. Short musical interlude, and then 2 dope boys. And Matt may have an archive pick or something from the DNC for members. You'll find out if you're a member. See you tomorrow. We've got a great week of all new interviews, so check us out.
Welcome to Two Dope Boys and a Podcast. I'm Michael Brooks.
I'm Phil McKenzie.
Two Dope Boys and a Podcast is a shout out from the margins. Each week we break down trends using the lens of culture to determine what's significant to your future and why. What's up, Phil? How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good, man. Glad to be here.
Great as always. Super producer Matt Leck. And we have someone very important in studio today. And important for a couple of reasons. One, he's about to beef with Phil, and I'm about to sit back and I'm going to be fucking amused by this because usually I have to hold down the beef quotient with Phil. I love to see somebody else take on that challenge, and also because it's a member of our crew that you are meeting for the very first time.
Yes.
Very happy to have you here. Larry, will you tell everybody about yourself, who you are, your full name, where you're coming from, all that good stuff?
Hey, what's up, people? My name is Larry Mensah. I am a native New Yorker, born and raised in the Bronx, independent curator, marketer, lover of culture, and also co-founder of Art Noir, which is a collective that's designed to push cultural inclusivity in spaces where it's not present.
Also, beef haver with Phil.
Exactly.
So speaking of which,
Uber lover.
Exactly.
all right, well, now you're going to get beef with me. Let's get off of Uber. We'll have that fight, all of us, later. And I will team like Voltron with Phil on that one. Yeah. But let's get to the brand F up, because I actually really don't give a fuck about this conflict. So I'm looking forward to just sort of instigate. All right, Phil, what's the brand F up for the week, my friends?
The brand F up of the week comes from TNT. And they didn't say anything wrong, but to me, they did something wrong because they gave Charles Barkley his own show called The Race Card. And the premise behind this show is that Charles Barkley is going to travel around the country and talk to different folks about race and, you know, kind of dive deep into race relations and what this all means. And the minute I read this, I couldn't have thought of a worse person to have this conversation.
Why is he the worst person?
Wait, yo.
I love chomping at the bit.
He won't even let you do the full setup.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. It's all good. Because Charles Barkley is the fucking worst when it comes to shit about race.
Wait.
That's
Before
why.
we go to the editorial, is there anything else to explain about this? Is there anything else to elaborate?
No, it speaks for itself.
It speaks for. All right, then, Larry, you
it's
should.
TNT.
Then excuse me. I
Obviously,
shouldn't have
Charles
interrupted.
Barkley is great on air on their basketball show.
Right.
Like Charles Barkley's great talking about basketball, kind of, sort of. For the most part, I'll give him 95% on basketball. But when to me, his social commentary, particularly in areas of race, is whack. And
Yeah.
so to have him,
He's kind of like a
be
diabetic Bill Cosby.
to be the focal point.
All right, Larry.
Yeah,
You
so
are defend-
that's my thing. I think he's whack on social issues, particularly around race.
I mean, he has said some off-color things, but I think TNT is not dumb enough to give him a show where they're going to allow him to just run reckless and be crazy. I think there is some humor to some of his comments, but I think it also could be an interesting opportunity to kind of unpack some things that people normally wouldn't talk to a reporter about. I mean, this is an athlete. He's revered, and I think he might be able to explore some things that a lot of people aren't comfortable talking about.
Revered. Speak for yourself.
He could hoop.
No, he's revered. No. You know what I would say though? I want to just step back from the Barkley beef, and I would say that I think this is a potential major win for TNT though, programming wise.
Oh, of course.
And I think what occurred to me when I first saw this is that, you know, you have the Kumanu Bell show, Kumanu Bell show on CNN, where he's, and I'm just basing it. I don't know him that well. I actually randomly went to the premiere of his show on FX and watched the premiere and never watched anything else from it again, which I guess is reflective of why that show, you know, didn't last. But he's a funny dude. He's a smart dude, but he has a certain, I don't know if earnestness is the right word, but I guess when I heard this concept, I was like, that's an interesting mashup, because you're kind of doing like something similar to what they're doing with Bell, but clearly with somebody with a radically different personality who's going to instigate people and set things off in a different way. And if you look at, you know, there's a podcast like Race Wars or something like that. There's kind of this market for like, let's have quote unquote honest conversations. Let's be a little bit more provocative. Yeah. Charles Barkley, he could be able to stir that. If he does it right, the ratings will probably be good.
Oh. Yeah, because I mean, would you feel different if this show was on Vice?
It has nothing to do with where the show is.
It has to do with Charles Barkley.
It has to do, it has specifically to do with Charles Barkley.
I don't know. I think there's potential for it to be interesting.
Yeah, like I'm not coming at this from the perspective of like TNT's ratings, which I think will be great. And it doesn't matter about TNT doing this or CNN doing this or Vice doing this. I have no horse in the race as to the provider of the content. I'm saying that, in my opinion, Charles Barkley has made part of Charles Barkley's brand is that, you know, it goes back to Nike. I'm not a role model. I could say whatever I want to say. He's the dude who throws somebody through a plate glass window. Like, he's just that reckless dude.
Yeah.
And I think that's worked for him from a branding perspective. But issues around race and social policy are actually very serious things. And Charles Barkley has shown no insight or credibility as to really discussing those issues. So if you want to just hear somebody say some shit like, oh, if black people won't even pull their pants up, then the police would respect them. Like, yeah, if that's what cats want to hear.
Yeah, I think Matt would
relevant.
like to hear that.
But I think my hope is that, particularly with the producers, they're picking people who are not going to agree with him and create space for that discourse that honestly isn't happening on TV at all. I think a lot of the conversations around race have been more so in the news and in the media, and you haven't really seen a program address race head on.
I guess those are different debates. I think it could do well ratings wise. I don't know about the social utility of it. I reference this other show that I have listened to a little bit called Race Wars, which has some very reckless conversations. It hosts some people that I would never host, like Ann Coulter, because fuck her. But at the same time, there have actually been moments on that show where there's actually some very substantive and interesting conversations and critiques that get offered and are probably injected into an audience share that would not be exposed to those types of arguments elsewhere. So I think that's like what Larry's saying.
That's the opportunity.
So maybe so. But my guess is it's a TNT show with essentially a sports figure. I don't even think that it's going to get really all that reckless or wild one way or another. I think it's going to end up being quite boring.
Like I'm not saying the conversation happen. I agree that we do need conversations around these things, but we need to have those conversations. If we're going to have them and you putting budgets behind this and you got an audience, those conversations should be relevant. And having someone like Charles Barkley, who has zero expertise in this area, B, has shown over years of having like a commitment or a deep belief in respectability politics as it pertains to black people and questioning positions of power. And that to me is fucking deeply problematic because black people's problems don't have shit to do with they fucking pants or the hairstyles they wear or music or none of that shit. He's slightly better than fucking what's that asshole?
No.
I mean, he's an asshole too. But
Don Imus.
I can't even think of his name.
Don Imus has a new Vice show.
You can edit that part out. But
no, who are you thinking about?
There's a dude he used to write Jason Whitlock.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You know, he's another one like fucking Jason Whitlock. They wanna. Their idea of being controversial is to give like the establishment positions that they feel comfortable with. Mm-hmm. And I think like that's bullshit because we live in a society, in a world where people are lying on the ground with their hands up getting shot. They don't got nothing to do with the shit that Charles Barkley says, and he's not equipped to have those conversations. I could think of 50 people that can better have those conversations. Give Ta-Nehisi Coates that show.
But will people watch?
Yeah, I think like you can't push it but so far, right? For a TNT vehicle. Like,
then don't do it.
Ta-Nehisi Coates not going to get.
Then don't do it.
Not going to carry that show.
Then I wouldn't want to watch him.
Why?
He's not interesting to watch.
Why? How you know that?
I've seen him do interviews. I've seen him do talks. They're not interesting. I'm not trying to disregard what he's saying, but I mean, you also have to understand the realm in which this content is being shared with us. And it's like they have to be someone who's engaging and captivating. And maybe Charles Barkley is that person. Maybe not.
Maybe Shaq is that person.
Shaq would have been interesting.
I don't know.
Honestly, Shaq would have been interesting, particularly coming from a military background. And
I was saying it as a throwaway joke to transition the segment.
Yeah, sorry.
Now he got me thinking about Shaq. All right, so is it a brand F up or not a brand F up? We got beef inside the brand F up this week.
Yeah,
that's cool. Beef is always good.
Beef is nutritious.
Yeah,
and
especially with soy sauce.
Especially, well, I don't know about that. Soy is not good for you, my friend. Soy is not your friend. All right, we got to get to what's up. All right, now we got to get to what's up, and the room is still electric. So weird to, especially me, because I get pretty heated. But it's interesting to be part of debates that I don't, in some ways, don't give a fuck about. Like Charles Barkley, he's such a take it or leave it for me. But regardless, let's get to what's up. And we're talking about a dude named Kevin Roberts, and I think everybody who listens to this show, who's sort of part of our kind of core audience of creatives in some respects, probably knows who this is. He's the chairman of Saatchi & Saatchi. He's the head of advertising at the agency's parent company, Publicis Group, which is a very large conglomerate that owns a sort of variety of ad agencies and so on and so forth. And he's someone who's actually influenced specifically Phil and I in some respects. He has a book called Love Marks, Future Beyond Brands, known as a very provocative thinker who actually, in some respects, like us, is interested in the margins and the unexpected places and how it moves, shifts, and evolves culture. Now, that setup is to lead you into some comments he made this past week, which I guess they could have been the brand F up too, because essentially in an interview, it's being reported many different places, and I'm taking this from Business Insider. To make a long story short, he just completely sort of dismissed the notion that, specifically in this case, gender diversity inside the advertising industry and leadership in the advertising industry is an issue. Now, I think the stat is it's about 11.6% of executives in advertising are women. And the fact that he said that this is a settled issue should tell you, relative to that stat, that the perspective is skewed. There's more to his comments, which we'll get to, but I just want to kind of set the table for this conversation and sort of point out that a woman named Cindy Gallup, who now works on a project called Make Love, Not Porn. Larry, we'll get to your beef on that project later. But that said, and she's an advertising veteran, very, very important leader in the advertising industry, and someone who has made it her business to speak out specifically on gender issues in advertising. She sort of rightfully called Kevin out. She said sexual harassment is endemic in media advertising in every industry. This is her on Twitter. Now, some of us are going to concur with Cindy, but also have a beef with her as well. So these are all of the issues that we talk about, from the actuality for the need for literal diversity itself, but also the way mindsets are reflected and stagnation is created in these environments, including by a guy, Kevin Roberts, which, you know, one of the reasons I think that this took a hold for so many people is he was someone and is someone who is actually capable of some very creative thinking. So it's very interesting to sort of see such lazy, hackneyed, old, and just, you know, stupid and kind of retrograde stuff coming out of his mouth. So that's the table. There's more to get to. Phil, let me get to you first on this. What's up?
Yeah. Full disclosure, Cindy Gallup also spoke at Influencer Conference in 2012. So
you got breaking news music, Matt?
Not breaking news, but, you know, I at least wanted to let you know I am fairly familiar with her work, right. And she has spoken at the principal event that I've produced over the past few years. And we asked Cindy to speak because she is dynamic. She's a great speaker. And I think her viewpoints around not only advertising, but around representation in media for women and her perspectives in her business, Make Love, Not Porn, are actually really interesting. You know, we don't have the full time to unpack all that, but I just wanted to set the stage there. Where I found this a little troubling was that Kevin Roberts' views as expressed in this article are clearly off and wrong. Like, I think you can't dismiss the fact that there are serious issues around gender diversity in advertising and in most industry based on the fact that your particular company is getting it right. So one of the quotes he makes in here, or that's a point that's pointed out, and I'm going to just read quickly from the article. And again, this is Business Insider, that Publicis Group has around a 50-50 gender split among all its staff, while around 65% of Saatchi staffs are female, as the agency wants to reflect the buyers of the types of products it is advertising, Roberts added. And additionally, the chief creative officer for Saatchi is a woman. I don't want to put my thoughts into his mouth, but I'm guessing that he's reasoning that, like, at Saatchi, we don't have to deal with this because clearly we've promoted women. We have 65% of the women, of the people who work here, are women. Our chief creative officer is a woman. This is what I'm thinking. I'm going to read two quick quotes from him that are in the Business Insider article. First one: we have a bunch of talented creative females, but they reach a certain point in their careers, 10 years of experience, when we are ready to make them a creative director of a big piece of business. And I think we fail in 2 out of 3 of those choices because the executive involved says, I don't want to manage a piece of business and people. I want to keep doing the work. So there's a distinction there about you're offering people an opportunity and they're saying they may or may not want to pursue that. And then I think an addendum to that point where he starts to talk about work environments. And this is later on in the article where he adds, so we are trying to impose our antiquated shit on them. And they're saying, and they're going, actually, guys, you're missing the point. You don't understand. I'm way happier than you. Their ambition is not a vertical ambition. It's this intrinsic circular ambition to be happy. So they say we're not judging ourselves by those standards that you idiotic dinosaur-like men judge yourself by. I don't think, in parens, the lack of women in leadership roles is a problem. I'm not worried about it because they're very happy, they're very successful, and they're doing great work. I can't talk about sexual discrimination because we've never had that problem, thank goodness.
So here comes the pylon.
Yeah, and then we have the pylon. And some of this stuff, most of this is problematic, but what really irritates me is the pylon aspect where you have a bunch of people, particularly guys, writing like all these think pieces on Medium or LinkedIn, like talking about how they've come to some great realization.
Trying to get dates.
Yeah, you know.
Throwing Kevin under the bus.
You know, they're trolling.
Yep.
Trying to act like
totally
they're so great.
doesn't get it. Would
Yeah.
you share that on Twitter for me? And maybe we could have coffee and just like talk about
It is
guys
bullshit.
that don't get it.
Yeah, I'm like, look, if you really feel that way, then you should be championing this by actually doing something about it. Like, these people are not cogs in the machine. Like, these are people who are higher ups in agencies.
Was
They
that part of
run
your critique of
agencies.
Cindy you were saying as well?
That's different.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
but just I'm going to speak to the pylon. She hasn't she's being Cindy Gallup hasn't commented on this since the original article.
Right.
You know, so she hasn't written anything about it, any of that kind of stuff, as of today.
Right.
So I think a couple of things. As a leader of an organization, particularly if you feel that this is not an issue within your organization, I kind of wonder why isn't he not championing that the industry kind of think more progressively about gender equality, hiring more women to work in C-suite opportunities. My other, I guess, question is if you see that the majority of women that have this 10 years experience of working at the organization, moving up the ladder, are not interested in being at executive level, why aren't you picking people who specifically that's their interest and their goal, and kind of identifying those folks? I wouldn't say it solves the problem, but I think it's a more proactive approach as opposed to just saying, oh, they put the time in, they do great work, we give them the opportunity, and they don't want to seize the opportunity.
I think, though, what's interesting about this, and I wish that he could have, de-gendered that conversation, because I think he's actually pointing to themes that are potentially much larger, but unfortunately they can break down in, a gender way, which isn't necessarily the case. Because I think, if you look at, this book is in big question right now, but it's a dude that we reference a lot. Jeremy Rifkin wrote a book several years ago called The European Dream, and he said that Europe is creating a dream in contrast to the American dream. And part of that notion was that, as an example, work to play versus play so you can work, essentially. Like that the shifting goalposts of life in a European context are a sort of broader value set in terms of quality of life and not just pure career ambition in an American context, and a broader set of what your goals are socially, culturally, and everything else. So I think that there are actually, and this is anecdotal, but it's something I could certainly attest to, of people of both genders saying, actually, that whole sort of track wasn't what was cracked up to be. It's burning me out, it's destroying me, and I don't really feel it, and I want to create something different. So I think that and then the demands that organizations actually recalibrate and really create, including for people going into the C-level, more sane work environments and more balanced lifestyles is actually a very big problem, a very big challenge that transcends gender. So I actually think if he didn't gender it, he could be raising some really on point questions.
Yeah.
And that's what's so problematic is that these are hot button issues.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to sort of pick a side.
Yeah.
Particularly when someone is already puts themselves on the wrong track. And I think we're pretty much in agreement that a lot of what was said here is on the wrong track. But what I was encouraged by is that these should be opportunities for us to have real conversations. And that's why I don't like the pylon element of it, because what we do is we have this culture of demonizing one person when from my perspective only, I would say, okay,
Charles Barkley.
Charles Barkley,
like Charles Barkley.
but he deserves it. So,
but I think there was something that I didn't like when they asked the
Mike?
gender debate. He said that there is no gender debate, full stop.
And that's wrong.
For me, I think
completely wrong.
It's probably also wrong to say we solved it. I'm very suspicious of anybody who says oh yeah, we took care of it.
You didn't solve it because you obviously are acknowledging other issues within the culture where people are saying that we're actually cool with doing what we want to do, getting our paycheck and doing other things. So I think that for me would make me question as a leader of an organization, what are we doing right to make sure that more people are happy in what they're doing, regardless of level, and regardless of gender. So I think for him to close the door on certain issues, that definitely for me raised a red flag and made me kind of question, from a leadership standpoint, is he really thinking about kind of the big picture?
Yeah. And I think it's easy for him to look at the organization because if you look at purely from a numbers perspective, and I think that's where he's going to hang his hat.
Yeah.
Publicis is 50-50 and Saatchi is 65%. But the numbers only do so much to kind of tell the story.
Yeah.
Because you don't really understand or you might not know how people really feel on a day-to-day walking into the organization. And with any business, we also know that Saatchi might be 65% women, but that doesn't mean that their clients are. That doesn't mean that their other vendors that they work with are. There's so many different issues that impact all of these things. And you're absolutely right. The fact that he didn't take a more holistic approach to it is completely wrong.
Yeah, particularly. Have you read Love Notes? Or was it
Love Mark?
Yeah,
Love Marks?
Love Marks.
Yeah.
And so just thinking about, I read this book many years ago. The impact that the book made on me, it's this doesn't sound like the same guy who wrote that book.
Yeah.
The last thing I would just say, my summary of this conversation for me, the best case that could come out of it is if we really clearly delineated those two tracks. There is a gender problem. There's also a work-life balance problem. There's also a purpose of work problem and how these organizations are even working and treating their employees to begin with. And those are connected, but they're not the same. And we need to have solutions for all of those things. And then I also agree with you, Phil, and I think it's important that the culture, there's nothing wrong with someone getting slapped or calling somebody out, you say something stupid. But I think what you meant by the pylon was that there were so many pieces that were just there was literally one piece, and we don't have to sort of feed the energy of it, but it was it wasn't even a critique. It wasn't well, this is why what he said is a problem. Or, even you could go harder. This is why this guy can't have a leadership role anymore. I don't care what you say. But it was literally I don't think he's a genius anymore because I read Love Marks and that book inspired me so much, kind of like you're saying. And instead of saying, okay, I don't know if this is the same guy, the whole article is just my favorite band put out a bad sophomore album and I'm upset about it.
Yeah.
And that kind of conversation,
all of that's bullshit.
It doesn't lead to anything.
The two things I would say is this should be an opportunity to have more conversation, not less conversation. In a perfect world, Cindy Gallup and Kevin Roberts would come on the show
Yes.
and have a conversation.
Let's get them on.
You know, like
Let's
that
get 'em
would be
on.
to me useful, because I think their differences written on paper might seem like they're really far apart, but they may not be. You know, as it pertains to the pylon stuff, the things I've seen have been written by people who are leaders in organizations. If you really care about this, if you really care about gender issues around diversity, or you care about people of color, just do something about it. Like, I don't need your LinkedIn or your Medium piece. I need you to go out and hire more people of color. I need you to go out and hire more women. Like, make your organizations and workplaces diverse. Don't just like cry and pile onto this guy about how it really affected you when you don't do shit. It's like people who like advocate for all these fucking charities all around the world, but they ain't got no black friends. Like, fuck off with that. You know, it's bullshit. You know,
I do the flip of that. I don't give any charities, but I have a lot of black friends.
There you go.
All right. That's what's up. Let's get to what's good.
Now we want to jump to what's good.
Oh, very official.
Yes, I'm using my official voice.
Charles Barkley voice.
Exactly.
That's
It's
not
terrible.
Oh, terrible is the Charles
Terrible.
Barkley.
That would be Charles Barkley. That's the only Charles Barkley I can do. Thank God.
You were doing a black man imitating Walter Cronkite before.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just deepen the voice and
Yeah.
sound like. Now let's get to what's good. Sports, man. We talking about sports and the
Yes,
future
sir.
of sports, and to me, I've seen the future of sports, and it is American Ninja Warrior. I
Preach.
love this show. I love American Ninja
I
Warrior.
thought that was American Gladiator.
No, American Ninja Warrior. You know, but American Ninja Warrior is basically a metaphor
Yeah.
for a whole like coalition and cadre of sports, including Tough Mudders, Spartan races, color runs. These sports and industries have become huge businesses. Tough Mudder, for an example, started in 2010 and it's on $100 million in revenue. And like I said, I'm a huge fan of American Ninja Warrior. It's a show that, to me, typifies a lot about what we talk about in terms of economy shifting, culture shifting. And when I watch the show and I watch these people compete, they're very talented. Obviously, they're incredible. They're in incredible shape, but they're just regular people. Like, this is not the only thing that they do. They usually come from other sports like gymnastics and what have you. But what really got me into the show and got me thinking about it was the fact that when you watch the competitors, they're competing against the course. They're not competing against themselves and against each other,
Against
rather.
each other, yeah.
And they all really root for one another. Men and women compete on the same course. And you really got to watch it to understand how much these people really support one another. They work out in teams oftentimes. They come in these collectives to try to really be the best they can be and beat this course. And when I compare that to more traditional sports that are more obviously zero-sum game, winner take all, the Olympics is right around the corner. Just all the negative energy around so much of sports, particularly football. I was a huge football fan. I barely watch football anymore. I mean, I've been an athlete all my life. I played sports all my life. You know, so I'm not like one of these anti-sports people. Actually, the opposite.
This is not an anti-sports
Yeah,
show.
I really love sports, but I think sports is shifting to be more inclusive on a lot of different levels, not only in the people who are playing, but the way in which we play sports. So that's really the sort of the setup, so to speak.
And I think it's just kind of, as you said, it's a reflection of just what's happening in society. I mean, for me, when I look at American Ninja Warrior, it's like regular people who want to be heroes in their town or heroes amongst their friends or heroes in their community. And it's kind of interesting, like, when you think about, I think there was one guy who won last year, and he was, like, the only person, like, finished the course. This idea of, like, individuals now telling their own stories and creating their own narratives. I think so much of that conversation is really revolved around, like, social media and people with their Instagrams and Snapchats. But to see it now kind of permeate within television, really kind of starting with, I think about like American Idol and those kind of shows, and now starting to see it shift more in the sports space. It's actually exciting because, I spend my Monday evenings watching these shows, and I'm kind of curious to see what's the next level of this, and how does this impact the more popular associations like basketball, football, baseball. How does that change things, if it does at all? Or does it shift people's attention or taste towards more of those sports because they know that there's a potential for them to actually participate and not just watch guys, kill themselves every Sunday? So I think that inclusive, being able to participate, I think is the key thing that makes this interesting to me, at least.
Yeah, I think that all of that is on point. And I think that there's two kind of interesting, for me, sort of cultural references in this sort of like culture economy of this conversation. And one is George Plimpton as a journalist. That was one of the things that he did. Like, I forget what team it was, but he wanted to be on a football team and get to be in one play. He wanted to train, this notion of being an experiential journalist. I think then there's also one of the most popular sports films of all time is Rudy. And that's just about a dude getting on the field for, a minute. Yeah. And I think that obviously has such deep emotional resonance. And if you have any type of, experience playing sports at high school level or I would say really any type of competitive sport, both how exciting even it can be even just at that level, and then how easily that translates into a really rich fantasy world, like in my case about being on the court against Andre or probably Pete, because I liked Andre, so I wanted to take out Pete. But I think that and I think the other aspect of it that's interesting and also from a kind of predictive sense is as you guys point to, this notion of a participant culture moving into something that is more like countering the stereotype or the notion that, well, on social media we're actually kind of not really doing anything. We're just sort of like minding our social media accounts, and then we're performing doing something, but we're just like, oh yeah, I had a picture here and I did, but actually you're just sort of like manning all of your various apps and accounts, and it's kind of disembodied. I think what we're getting pushed toward with more like active mediums, maybe in some respects like Instagram, in some respects like Snapchat, connected with this is this idea that you want to use this new age of access and participation to, live out fantasy, but in a good way and in a practical way. And I think, I remember that gamification was a very popular, trendy conversation several years ago. Yep. To me, this is actually like, in some ways, a much more inspired version of it, because literally go out and, get that game peak athletic experience and democratize it and expand it, and it becomes like an excellence that a lot more people can participate in.
I mean, the seeds were sown for this with the successful implementation of Title IX.
Right.
When Title IX made a level playing field in collegiate sports for men and women. And I think we're 30 plus years into Title IX. So you're seeing a group of women, a generation of women rather, who've grown up playing sports from a very young age. That's no longer, I think the idea that sports is segregated, meaning women don't play sports. That's just so, I don't even know people who have those ideas anymore, but in a professional sense, the avenues for women to be professional athletes, I think, are fewer than they are for men. You have tennis, you have basketball, and I'm sure there's other there's women's golf.
And there's a distinction, I would say, in terms of tennis, for all the problems that still exist in tennis, I would say tennis is actually a standout in terms of like very few people take professional women's basketball as seriously as men's basketball. Tennis is, for all of its problems and them getting paid different numbers and all of this, it's disproportionate in terms of like, I'm a tennis fan and I'm watching both the men and women's French.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's certainly disproportionate.
No doubt. I think these events, these sports allow, and particularly because so many of them are team based. The Tough Mudder is a team thing where it doesn't matter if I'm really good. The 4 to 5 of us have to go through this course together and work through it. And so many of these teams are co-ed. It's just a different level of, I think, collaboration and a different spirit where people are just walking into this viewing folks as equals, meaning like, you can, as long as we can compete at this together, it doesn't really matter that like the gender differences and all the rest of it. Not to make things too utopian, but I think Title IX has gotten us this far, and now in the next 10 to 15, 20 years, we'll kind of see probably a new evolution of this. And on the flip side of that, if we want to say, the NFL, professional football is the biggest sport on the landscape, I don't know if we're going to see that sport in the same sense that
you're
today.
seeing it a little bit. I forget the coach's name, but she's coaching on the Arizona Cardinals, female.
Yeah, there's a woman coach there.
And I believe this is her second season coaching. And also San Antonio Spurs, I believe, also has a female coach. So I think it's obviously the head coaches of those teams are well respected. And it's becoming less and less of a stigma. It will be a very interesting day when a woman is named a head coach for a male basketball team.
Yeah. And on the tennis side, Djokovic has a woman coach.
Djokovic does. Yep.
Yeah.
So I love this stuff. I would love to compete, but I don't know if I have the wherewithal. But the other thing, what I love about this is that it's not about, particularly with American Ninja Warrior, it's not about some person being like a superstar. I watched it a couple weeks ago, and there was an older gentleman who trained with someone who had participated a year before, and he just wanted to just do it for fun and just show that, irregardless of age, you can still participate and have a full life. And I think there's so many.
The 60-year-old guy, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, so I think it's great. My hope is that it becomes a much more popular sport, and it's not just something that comes on in the summertime.
Yeah, they've had disabled athletes. They had a guy who had lost his leg. Actually, they had 2 participants this year who had only one leg, and one guy had a prosthetic. The other guy just had the one leg, so he raced without a prosthetic. So just things like that. Like, I know there's gonna be people out there who like, oh, it's corny, but I think it's really inspiring.
Watch it, because I thought the same thing, because my mom watches it, and I sat and watched it with her one day, and I was like, oh my god, this is actually kind of good.
Yeah, it captures something in you when you watch, and I think anyone can sit there and use that as inspiration to maybe do something active or not give up. When I saw them dudes with one leg on this course, and I was like, fuck, Phil, like, shit, get in the game. You got 2 good legs and 2 good arms, and you be lazy like a motherfucker.
Right. Yeah. That's good.
So that's what's good.
All right, so now we got to get to digging in the crates. This is where we give you a pick from any aspect of culture, which of course includes sport, music, books, movies, anything from any time that can make your world better. Larry, what you got?
For me, I'm a big reader, so I'm going to suggest a book that you're familiar with, or Homegoing.
Yeah.
It's a debut novel by Ya Jesse, who's, I believe, 26, 27 years old. I And it's a book about two half sisters, set, I believe, 18th century Ghana. One sister is put in slavery. The other one marries a British governor. And you watch the evolution of these family trees over a 200-year period. Pretty powerful book, but beautifully written. And it's definitely, I think, going to be top nominee for Book of the Year. And another book that I just started reading upon recommendation is Shibumi. Have you heard of that book?
I haven't heard of that book. Shibumi? Have you heard of that, Phil?
So
No.
it's like a spy novel, but then like this Japanese kind of Zen thing going on, and
I
like,
would definitely.
and the game
get to that
Go,
book.
which is I guess Japanese chess, is like an integral part of the story. And they talk about trying to reach Shibumi, which is like, you know, the most simplest state. And I think for me, it's been really interesting to read, particularly living in New York, where you have all these different distractions, and you know, you're kind of conditioned to want more, to be reading something where it's like actually you should be wanting less, and really trying to find true happiness and balance in your life. So it's an older book, but pretty good read.
Shibumi.
Yes, that's it.
Oh, I would definitely read that.
And then the author is actually, that's a pseudonym. It's not his real name. I can't see the name. Trevanian. So Trevanian is the author. That's his pseudonym. He's written a couple books. There's a part 2 to this book that I believe Leonardo DiCaprio is turning into a movie or something like that.
Okay.
So
That's dope.
I have a book and a piece of music. I'll do the music first because it sort of dovetails. We were talking about Gangstar, and the artist that I'm going to highlight is J. Rue the Damager, and a lot of his production was done by Premier. And though he's most famously known for a song called Come Clean, which has a super dope beat, as most Premier beats are, the song that I really love, and I love it because of the video, is called Can't Stop the Prophet. And I always remember the video because it's animated.
oh yeah,
Yeah, so it's like
Dope
this
video.
animated video, and it's just a dope video. So I think anything you listen to by J. Rue is gonna be hot. He's one of my favorite lyricists, but particularly if you watch like Can't Stop the Prophet, you can find it on YouTube. J. Rue the Damager is a great video. It's animated. It has a great story. It kind of goes back to the time in hip hop when a song wasn't just a joint. It was a story that kind of, a whole narrative that led you somewhere.
Stop the prophet. Come here real quick. Yo, I just saw him was downtown. Let me put you on. Word, he down there bugging. He got them ill and out. They shooting everything else.
Let's continue the saga.
That's on the music side. And on the book side, I'm going through a book, and it's taking me a little while because it's the type of book that you got to sit with it for a while. You got to take a lot of notes. I've highlighted the hell out of it. And it's called Radical Man by Charles Hamden Turner. It's out of print, but I found it on Amazon through like one of their used booksellers. I would really highly recommend everybody get their books through Amazon. If you're not going to go to your local bookseller,
Well, let's add that caveat.
you know, if you're not going to go like your local bookstore,
which you should.
which you should, and you just can't find the
Yeah.
book that's out of print or what have you,
Yeah, true,
I would
true.
highly recommend like Amazon used booksellers, because they have amazing books there for like a penny. Like literally they're a penny. I picked up a bunch of books very recently that were like total of $12. But anyway, this book is great. It's a very kind of deep dive into these different thought processes about how people interact with society. And I found out about the book through another book that we reference a lot on the show, called the Open Source Everything Manifesto, written by Robert David Steele. And in his book, he talked about this book in such an intriguing way. It led me to dig it up. So my specific recommendation is The Radical Man, or Radical Man by Charles Hamden Turner. And that's it.
So we're really laying it on you this week because I'm about to recommend a book called Multitude, which is co-written by Michael Hart and Antonio Negri, and it's part of a trilogy that they put out. The first book was called Empire. which is also worth reading, that came out in 2000. And then Commonwealth is the third one. It came out in 2009, and Multitude came out in 2003. One of the reasons that I like the book is it is very anticipatory. I would say that there were definitely things that book identified in terms of where the global system was going, in terms of problems and contradictions. And then also they really were very brilliant about sort of capturing, like, how can you, a multitude in some sense is what do mass movements look like that still have difference and distinction and diversity. So you're not in sort of like one assemblage, and you're not collapsing into one narrative. You have multiple narratives, but you're also synchronized enough that you can kind of create like a political counterweight, essentially. And there's 3 different sections of the book. And the first sort of has to do with different modes of war. And then there's what the multitude is. And then there's a section on democracy. And it's a doorway to a critiques of how we practice democracy, and can that concept be broadened. And there's a lot of discourse on democracy. Again, it's another book that you could take it as a kind of like heavy neo-Marxist kind of lift, but it also has a lot of relevance, I think, again, for really anybody, whether you're an activist or a brand manager. And it situated, I think, in 2003 where we were going and where we are very effectively. So Multitude by Michael Hart, Antonio Negri. Larry, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you.
Can't wait to have you on again soon.
Yeah, I'm glad I finally made it.
Yeah, brother.
Pleasure.
Glad to have you in the house.
Pleasure.
Fun.
Even before the Charles Barkley follow-up, you're going to have to come back. Super producer Matt Leck. Power behind the throne, Charmaine, the intern. Follow us on Instagram, 2DopeBoysPod on Instagram. Follow us on Twitter at 2DopeBoysPod. All of our Twitters and all that will be on the show notes, and you can find us on Gmail. Many ways of connecting with us. Tell your friends about the show. Leave us a review on iTunes. We're at like 115. Bang us out another one. Or if you don't want to deal with iTunes, listen to us on Stitcher. Get in touch with us to find out about consulting, speaking, all that good stuff. See you on Thursday.
Peace.
Peace.